half of Americans, women and children, that they are allowed to do things that are really an abuse of the privacy and rights of the rest of Americans. Well, how can that be, from your perspective?
I think it was planned a long time ago. The civil rights movement was hijacked by these people. And they saw the door to say that it was a civil right. And big money people started pouring money. They did it gradually. It didn't happen overnight. This has been going on for years. But I think they found in the civil rights movement a door to say our civil rights are being violated. But they forget that now they're violating our rights. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, you think they forget?
Pardon?
You really think they forget that they're violating our civil rights?
Oh no, they don't forget.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing. They follow. See what they did. The church failed to do. They copied the civil rights movement to a T from the day it started. I mean, when it really picked up with Rosa Parks. They observed it, studied it, and copied it, and we were asleep while they were plotting on us.
And the language thing too. I've always maintained when I do open lines on this subject, I think that some gay persons have been persuaded that Christians, for instance, are so-called haters, but I think most understand that that's a perversion of the language, perversion of the word. They know better. And so it's an intentional thing. It's not by accident. Matt, I want to ask you something. Did you want to comment on that? Or?
Go ahead, I'll just incorporate it.
Okay. A couple of years ago, a soldier named Bradley Manning, who was working in intelligence, had a spat with his gay lover, and as an act of vengeance, I don't know the details of what that was supposed to do exactly, but he leaked thousands and thousands of emails to WikiLeaks, putting the nation's security at risk, putting agents in the field at risk. So Bradley Manning was convicted, sent to prison, but then Bradley decided he wanted to be Chelsea. So Chelsea Manning is now in a security prison in Colorado and undergoing gender change, gender transition. And now the Army has declared that he's in prison, he's a traitor, he leaked all these documents, but we, the taxpayers, are paying for his sex change operation. Now we know that there are, I think, some other 10 transgenders in the military who are filing for the same privileges, and so here we go. So Matt, the question is, can you talk about the effect of the transgender acceptance and advocacy in America's military?
Well, it's certainly it's a tragedy because the Obama administration has used the military as a social experimentation, forced entity. And a lot of people that have Judeo-Christian values or Christians or just people of faith and have different moral convictions are being forced out of the military, whether they're chaplains or generals or others. There's many, many people that no longer make the military their career because of the fact is once you want to be responsible to the person above you, and the person above you is getting this pressure from President Obama to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and going all the way down. They're transforming the entire military, and if you don't participate in and follow the agenda, then you're not going to be elevated. So they're literally reaching a glass ceiling, and they can't go any further. This idea of changing your sex is actually ludicrous. Johns Hopkins University was the first institution in the United States that did SRS, or sexual reassignment surgery. And you can't change your sex. You are male or you're female. You can't change that. You can do plastic surgery. You can do vocal shadings to change the pitch of your voice. You can do facial plastic surgery. You can do total mastectomies. You can have breast implants. You can do phalanectomies. And you can have artificial penis, added, or whatever along the list, plus much more. Then you take either your opposite sex hormones of high levels of estrogen if you're male, or vice versa, testosterone if you're female. You can do all of that. That doesn't change your gender. That's plastic surgery. And Johns Hopkins participated in that. And they backed away from it. They also shut down that gender so-called reassignment clinic, the SRS clinic, because they found that there was no consequential benefit to it. Many of the people that went through this still had the same stress, and some of the people who went through it wanted to go back to their original birth gender of male or female, and had to go back through some of the things that you remove, you can't put back. And so they're in stress over the fact that they no longer want to be this other fictitious person. And so they shut it down and they stomped it. But, I think, if you go back, one of the questions, and I'll just do this really quick. If you go back to 1948, where did all this begin in America, and frankly around the world? You go back to Alfred Kinsey, 1948, Sexuality in the Human Male. Go look at Table 34. Well, what's Table 34? Table 34 is a chart in which Alfred Kinsey published in 1948, trying to use stopwatches timing the amount of orgasms a person would have in a 24-hour period. What was he trying to prove? He was trying to prove his hypothesis that you're sexual beings from birth. Well, you have a 2 or 4-year-old in that chart. Now, how does he get that information? He got it from pedophiles, he got it from fathers and grandfathers who were molesting, he paid them. It's all part of his, it's right there. Go Google Alfred Kinsey, Table 34. You're going to find it there. He should have been arrested because of the illegality of that. He then did surveys of pimps, not people who were raped, but pimps. And ultimately concluded of the 2,000 and some women, or 2,000 and some people surveyed, there was not one single adverse consequence for rape, except for one woman who had some slight bleeding. And so as a result of Alfred Kinsey's book, 1948, he came out with Sexuality in Human Female, 1953. Hugh Hefner was a virgin in college. He was influenced by Kinsey. He then launched Playboy. To this day, he calls himself the pamphleteer of Kinsey. And that ultimately affected the ALI, the American Law Institute. So one of the things that they did in 1954 was when it started to affect law, if having any parameter on human sexuality is harmful, and we're so-called sexual beings from birth, even as young as 2 months old, in Kinsey's world, then the consequences for statutory rape, you should lower the age of consent should be lowered. You should decriminalize or at least reduce the crime penalty for rape because it's not consequential, it's not harmful. And so that began to affect law. So rape laws began to change, consent laws began to change, and you go on and on and on. It infiltrated the academic institutions. There was opposition to it, but Rockefeller wanted to promote it, and he was the financier behind Alfred Kinsey. And it was that agenda that ultimately literally transformed the world. So what we're seeing right now really goes back to the time of Kinsey. And what did he want to do? He wanted to abolish the concept of Judeo-Christian morality by abolishing the very notion of marriage so that he could abolish the very concept that there is a God. And when you take all restraints off of human sexuality, that was his agenda. And I think that's what you're seeing with the outplaying of this agenda, as we're seeing specific aspects of it play out today.
I know you want questions only from that, but which Rockefeller? Because there's...
I have to go back, and it was one of the early...
Are we talking the vice president?
No, it wasn't the vice president.
Okay, that former...
It was
okay.
Rockefeller. I'll go back and get his first name because there's multiple Rockefellers, but they're all part of it.
All right, we are at the...
But I can get that.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
he did a lot of that kind of funding, and he funded a lot of the media. Since you didn't have many media sources, he funded the promotional aspect of Kinsey to puff that into the media sources.
Version.
Just one